to just take a second and picture something for me. Like, really close your eyes and visualize the ultimate dream scenario destination wedding. You are sitting there in this, perfectly arranged row of chairs, and the ceremony is just about to start.
Oh, I think we all have that exact picture hardwired into our brains, right?
Right. You have this panoramic, endless expanse of crystal clear water stretching out right in front of you. It's like merging completely with the sky. And there is this spectacular, fiery sunset dipping down into the horizon.
Casting those incredible long shadows across the whole venue, it's the classic image.
Exactly. Maybe you're sitting at a luxury vineyard with a glass of local wine in your hand, or maybe you're even on a completely private rocky island and you're just hearing the waves gently lap against the shore.
It's the absolute pinnacle of romantic celebration. I mean, for the last 50 years, the wedding industry has basically sold us this exact package.
The salt water, the warm sea breeze, the palm trees.
Yeah, the whole coastal resort vibe, it's deeply ingrained in the culture. If you hear luxury destination wedding, your brain immediately goes to the Caribbean or maybe the Mediterranean coast or somewhere tucked away in Hawaii.
Which makes total sense. But
Yeah.
here is the massive plot twist that we're looking at today. In that scenario I just described for you, you aren't looking at an ocean at all.
Not even close.
No. There are no sharks, there is zero salt water, and there is definitely no hurricane season. You are looking at the Great Lakes.
And that profound pivot, from the crowded saltwater coast, these massive freshwater shores, it's exactly the shift that is completely reshaping the entire wedding industry landscape right now.
Especially as we look at the trends for 2026,
Yeah.
which is why we are taking a deep dive today into this really fascinating collection of research we've been analyzing.
It's a great data set.
It really is. We have a core document here simply titled Great Lakes Waterfront Venues, along with this whole stack of market research on the event planning industry. And our mission for this deep dive is twofold.
Right, because we need to understand the why and the how.
Exactly. First, we need to understand exactly why the shorelines of Michigan and Ontario are rapidly becoming like the absolute epicenter of destination weddings for 2026. Why are couples abandoning the beaches of Cabo for the shores of Lake Huron?
Which sounds crazy until you look at the data.
Totally. But secondly, and I think crucially for you listening, we are going to unpack the technology behind this shift, because pulling off a remote luxury island wedding in the middle of a massive freshwater lake isn't exactly easy.
Well, it's a logistical nightmare traditionally. You're hundreds of miles from your hometown. It requires serious operational power.
So we are going to look very closely at how a specialized wedding planning platform called Weddizer is serving as the digital engine here. It's essentially making all these incredibly complex destination weddings seamlessly possible.
We are really looking at a perfect convergence here. It's shifting aesthetic desires meeting, quite frankly, massive technological empowerment.
Because historically, the barrier to entry for that kind of uniqueness was just too high, right? Logistics stood in the way.
Oh, absolutely. We're seeing couples actively move away from the traditional expected coastal resorts. They want something that feels more unique, more personalized, something that hasn't been, plastered all over social media a million times already.
Right. But if you wanted something bespoke and remote in the past, you basically had to hire an army of planners.
We had to be a millionaire with a dedicated logistics staff. It just wasn't accessible for the average person.
Okay, so let's really unpack this, starting with the geography itself. Because the way I'm looking at this Great Lakes wedding broom, it feels almost like discovering a secret menu at your absolute favorite restaurant.
Oh, I like that analogy. The secret menu.
Yeah, you know how a secret menu works? You get this incredible, exclusive item that feels tailor-made for you, but you aren't paying the massive markup of the flagship dish. With the Great Lakes, you are getting all the breathtaking coastal aesthetics.
The beaches, the high-end resorts, the expansive horizon views.
Exactly. But you are completely bypassing the saltwater. You are avoiding the catastrophic weather risks of the tropics. And most importantly, you are dodging those astronomical, heavily inflated coastal resort price tags.
That analogy works perfectly, especially when you look at the underlying economics of it. Because the appeal here isn't just about what you're getting, it's also about what you are strategically avoiding.
Right, it's the hardcore practicality hiding right behind the romance.
Exactly. Our source material lays out several core advantages of the Great Lakes region that are driving this massive freshwater boom. Obviously, the stunning freshwater beaches with these truly panoramic views are the initial aesthetic draw.
Sure, people want the pretty pictures.
Right. But the real engine driving the decision-making process for these couples is the combination of affordability and accessibility.
Let's dig into that affordability piece, because the research explicitly points out that compared to traditional coastal resorts, the Great Lakes offer significant savings. But it's not just the venue rental fee that's cheaper, is it?
No, not at all. The real killer for destination weddings is always the travel logistics. When you analyze the geographic advantage of the Great Lakes, it is staggering.
Because of where it's located.
Right. You have incredibly easy travel access from major population centers in both the U.S. and Canada. Let's run a quick comparison. Think about a traditional destination wedding in, say, Hawaii.
Okay, visualizing Hawaii.
But
Expensive.
Very. If you live in Chicago or New York, you are asking your guests to book expensive multi-leg flights. You're asking them to deal with TSA, potential layovers, and jet lag.
And you are asking them to take significant time off work, usually a minimum of like 4 to 5 days just to justify the travel time. The barrier for guest attendance is massive.
It is. The friction is incredibly high. If you've ever tried to herd 50 relatives from an airport baggage claim to a resort shuttle in a foreign country.
Oh my gosh, you know the exact nightmare we're talking about here. You are basically asking your college roommate to take out a second mortgage and burn all their vacation days just to watch you cut a piece of cake.
Precisely. But with the Great Lakes, you are leveraging drivable international borders and massive regional highway systems.
Which changes the math completely.
It does. A huge portion of the North American population, like millions of people, lives within a single day's drive of these shorelines, whether you are coming from Ohio, Illinois, Pennsylvania, or Toronto.
You can just load your family into a car on a Friday morning and be at a luxury waterfront venue by Friday afternoon.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture of the 2026 wedding industry, this is a massive shift toward what economists call accessible luxury.
Accessible luxury. I really like that term. It means you aren't sacrificing the high-end feel, but you are removing the punishing barriers to entry.
Right. By eliminating those expensive coastal flights and the need for 4 nights in a $600 a night tropical resort, couples aren't just saving money. They are actively reallocating their budgets.
Oh, so they're spending the same amount, just on different things.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
$10,000 or $15,000 that would have gone collectively to the airline industry is instead going directly into the experience of the wedding itself.
So they can afford better food, a higher tier venue, live entertainment.
And perhaps most importantly, a multi-day celebration,
Yeah.
rather than just a frantic 4-hour reception before everyone has to fly home.
That makes total sense from an economic standpoint. It's a reallocation of resources from transportation to actual celebration. But there's another major point in our research that I really have to push back on.
Okay, let's hear it.
Or at least get you to explain it to me, because it sounds totally counterintuitive.
Hmm.
The document heavily promotes the 4-season appeal of the Great Lakes region. It specifically contrasts summer sunsets with winter wonderlands.
Ah, yes, the winter weddings.
Right. Now, I completely get the summer sunsets. Lake Michigan in July is objectively gorgeous. People are in sundresses. The weather is perfect. But winter wonderlands? Come on.
You're skeptical.
Very. Are couples genuinely seeking out freezing, snow-covered, wind-whipped lakeside weather for their weddings? Or is this just a really clever, aggressive marketing rebranding by the venues to push off-season discounted rates?
It is a very fair question. And honestly, it's the exact skepticism most people have when they first see the data. The truth is, it's a bit of both, but perhaps not in the cynical, purely profit-driven way you might think.
Okay, color me intrigued. How so?
Well, yes, off-season pricing is always an incentive. A venue in February will always be cheaper than that same venue in June. However, there is a genuine, rapidly growing aesthetic desire for this winter wonderland vibe.
That goes beyond just saving a few bucks.
Far beyond it.
Yeah.
Have you ever looked into the rise of Higgs culture over the last few years?
Hygge, that's the Scandinavian concept, right?
Exactly. It's a Danish and Norwegian word for a mood of deep, cozy contentment. It's about well-being through enjoying the simple, comforting things in life. And the wedding industry has completely co-opted and elevated this concept for 2026.
Wait, so how does that translate to a freezing lake?
When we talk about a winter wedding on the Great Lakes, we aren't talking about making your guests stand shivering in a snowdrift for 30 minutes. We are talking about spectacular architectural spaces.
Okay, I'm listening.
Imagine a venue with massive, floor-to-ceiling reinforced glass walls. Outside, you have a frozen, snow-swept lake stretching to the horizon, creating this stark, dramatic, almost monochromatic landscape.
That sounds intense.
It is, but inside, you have radiant floor heating, massive roaring stone fireplaces, thousands of candles, heavy velvet draping, and this highly curated, intimate atmosphere.
Okay, when you paint the picture like that, I can definitely visualize it. The glass walls, the roaring fire, the contrast between the harshness outside and the ultimate comfort inside.
For a certain type of modern couple, that contrast is highly romantic. It offers a dramatic, cinematic backdrop that is completely different from the standard, slightly cliché summer beach wedding that every single one of their friends is doing.
It's memorable specifically because it embraces the extreme elements rather than running from them. It's the ultimate cozy retreat.
Exactly. But of course, as we established, the Great Lakes region is absolutely massive. We are talking about thousands of miles of shoreline. It's not just one single vibe or one single climate.
Right. To really understand how platforms like Weddizer are capitalizing on this entire massive market, we need to break down the distinct flavors of this region. Because planning a wedding on a beach in Michigan requires entirely different logistics than planning one in a snow-covered lodge.
It's definitely not a monolith.
No. So let's start with the U.S. side of the border. Let's look closely at the Michigan waterfronts.
This is where the sheer, staggering diversity of the region really becomes apparent. The Michigan shoreline is immense in its scale. It touches Lake Michigan, Lake Superior, Lake Huron, and Lake Erie.
And our source research characterizes the defining aesthetic of this entire Michigan side as rustic elegance meets natural beauty, which sounds lovely, but let's dig into Lake Michigan specifically.
Because the data highlights this as the absolute hotspot for 2026.
Yes, it mentions specific coastal cities like Traverse City, Grand Haven, and Sleeping Bear Dunes. What immediately stood out to me here was the wild contrast in the types of venues available within a very short drive of each other.
It really is a unique micro-region.
On one hand, you have these incredible soft, sandy beaches for these laid-back, barefoot weddings, but then literally right down the road, you have ultra-luxury vineyard resorts.
And the promotional material explicitly claims the sunset views over Lake Michigan literally rival the most famous ocean destinations in the world.
And if you look at the actual physics and meteorology of the region, they aren't exaggerating about those sunsets. Wait, really? A lake sunset beats a California sunset? How does that work?
It has to do with atmospheric scattering and geography. When you are on the western coast of Michigan, looking out over Lake Michigan, you are looking directly west over a massive uninterrupted body of water.
Okay, so just like standing in California looking at the Pacific.
Exactly. There are no mountains or land masses to break the horizon. As the sun sets, the light passes through a thicker layer of the Earth's atmosphere. This process, specifically Rayleigh scattering, filters out the shorter blue wavelength.
Oh, wow, getting into the science of it.
It's fascinating. It allows the longer red, orange, and purple wavelengths to dominate. Because the lake surface is vast and relatively flat, it reflects these vibrant colors perfectly, creating a double exposure effect of light.
So it is visually indistinguishable from standing on the coast of Southern California, but you are standing in the Midwest? That is wild.
And you get the multi-million-dollar California view, but you get it in Michigan.
But let me push back on something else here.
Mhm.
The research talks about blending these barefoot, soft sand beach ceremonies with luxury vineyard receptions. Doesn't that feel disjointed?
How do you mean?
You're dragging your guests through the sand in Sleeping Bear Dunes and then expecting them to go sip a 2015 Pinot Noir at a high-end estate. It seems like two totally different weddings.
It sounds contradictory, but that juxtaposition is exactly the texture of the experience that modern couples are paying top dollar for right now.
Really? They want the whiplash.
It's not whiplash, it's pacing. The soft sand of Sleeping Bear Dunes offers a deeply organic, grounded, almost primal ceremony space. It is intentionally unpretentious.
It strips away the stuffiness of a traditional church wedding.
Exactly. But then shifting the reception to a high-end vineyard nearby brings back that essential element of luxury and comfort for the party.
So you don't have to eat your dinner in the sand.
Right. It's the blending of the two, the wild nature followed by curated sophistication, that defines this new rustic elegance trend.
Okay, so that's the beachy vineyard vibe of the western coast. But then our research moves up into northern Michigan, touching Lake Superior, and the aesthetic shifts entirely.
We leave the vineyards behind completely.
Here we are talking about what the industry calls a woodland meets lake charm. We're looking at heavy log cabins, sprawling forest lodges, private lakefront cottages tucked away in the trees.
And a massive emphasis on intimate elopements.
It feels very secluded, very cabin in the woods, but make it high fashion.
This specific woodland aesthetic appeals to a very specific, very powerful psychological driver in modern wedding planning. It's the desperate desire for an exclusive retreat.
Which makes sense. We exist in a hyper-connected, always-on, notification-driven world.
Exactly. Think about the daily lives of these couples. The idea of taking your 50 closest friends and family members, driving them deep into a secluded forest lodge on the rugged edge of Lake Superior, and essentially unplugging from society for a weekend. It feels incredibly luxurious.
It's luxury through isolation.
That's a perfect way to put it. Architecturally and geographically, the dense forest provides a natural sense of enclosure and ultimate privacy. You are literally walled off from the world by pine trees.
But simultaneously, stepping out onto the deck overlooking the vastness of the lake provides the grandeur and scale needed for a monumental life event.
It is an aesthetic choice that makes a very clear statement. It says, we are stepping completely out of the real world for a few days to focus only on this moment and these people.
I love that concept, the enclosure of the forest meeting the grandeur of the water. But then, and this is where Michigan really flexes its diversity as a destination, you can swing the pendulum completely in the opposite direction.
You don't have to go into the woods at all.
The text highlights Detroit's urban twist as a major emerging market for 2026. We go from a secluded, quiet forest lodge to a bustling, modern riverfront with a towering city skyline.
It's a completely different energy.
We are talking about high-rise rooftop venues, luxury hotel ballrooms with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic lake and river views. You've got the industrial grit and noise of the city paired with the vastness of the water.
It's the visual and energetic juxtaposition that makes the Detroit waterfront so compelling right now. Detroit has undergone massive waterfront revitalization over the last decade.
The glow-up is real.
It really is. From a design perspective, you have the sharp, geometric, man-made lines of the skyscrapers and the industrial bridges, contrasting directly with the fluid, dynamic, natural movement of the Detroit River and the Great Lakes system.
It's for the couple who wants the best of both worlds, isn't it?
Exactly. For couples who want the vibrant energy, the late-night after-parties, the incredible culinary scene, and the architectural sophistication of a major historic metropolis.
But who still fundamentally want that connection to the water as the backdrop to their vows.
This urban fusion is the perfect solution for them.
If we step back and look at Michigan as a whole, it really isn't just one destination. You look at the options and it's incredible.
It's incredibly versatile.
You can literally be a barefoot beachcomber in Sleeping Bear Dunes on a Friday, getting married with sand between your toes and wind in your hair. And then, theoretically, by Saturday, you could be a glamorous socialite in a downtown Detroit rooftop ballroom.
Clanking champagne glasses with the city lights reflecting off the river, and it's all happening within the borders of the exact same state.
Which is precisely why this specific region is experiencing such an economic boom in the event sector.
What's fascinating here is how this incredible geographic and architectural diversity within a single state perfectly caters to the modern trend of highly personalized events.
Right, because today's couples absolutely reject the old wedding factory approach.
Oh, they hate it. Where every wedding at the local country club looks exactly the same. They demand that their venue be a direct, bespoke reflection of their unique personalities.
And Michigan provides a canvas for almost any aesthetic vision imaginable, as long as that vision involves fresh water.
Exactly.
So we firmly established that Michigan is bringing the rustic elegance, the organic beaches, the deep woods, and the urban grit. We've solved for rustic intimacy. But what happens when the guest list includes, like, international dignitaries?
Or what if the couple's aesthetic demands 19th century architecture and old world sophistication?
Right. You can't fake a European vineyard in the Michigan woods. For that, you have to cross the border.
Exactly. When the vision requires a level of historic permanence or international cosmopolitan flair, you have to look east. And that brings us to the Canadian side of the equation.
So let's shift our focus to the Ontario shores. The research specifically highlights Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, and the massive expanse of Georgian Bay.
It's a vast area.
And if Michigan's defining tagline for 2026 was rustic elegance, Ontario's defining aesthetic, according to the market analysis, is luxury, culture, and scenic sophistication.
It immediately feels a bit more buttoned up, a bit more cosmopolitan.
Perhaps a bit more traditional in its approach to high-end events.
It is a very distinct shift in tone and market positioning. If we look at Toronto, for example, the data positions it as the absolute pinnacle of contemporary urban waterfront aesthetics in North America.
We aren't just talking about nice hotels here.
No, we're talking about ultra-premium, five-star luxury properties overlooking Lake Ontario, complete with highly curated, architecturally stunning, harborfront outdoor ceremony spaces.
It's the modern pulse of the region. It's the financial and cultural hub.
Yes. Toronto offers a level of international metropolitan sophistication that is very hard to match anywhere else on the lakes. It is specifically targeted at the couple who wants world-class, Michelin-level culinary scenes
High-end avant-garde design.
and an environment that feels deeply cosmopolitan and globally connected, all while maintaining that sweeping waterfront horizon.
But Ontario isn't just about the towering glass skyscrapers of the big city. The research immediately transitions into the Niagara-on-the-Lake region.
Which is stunning.
It definitively calls it one of the most romantic wedding destinations in all of Canada. And reading the descriptions and looking at the venue histories, it's very easy to see why.
It's described as this perfect, seamless blend of deep wine country and waterfront charm.
You have these massive, sprawling vineyard weddings with sweeping views of the lake, historic 19th century estates, and intimate luxury boutique hotels.
It feels very European, very classic, almost like you've been transported to the French countryside, but with a massive lake in the background.
Niagara-on-the-Lake brilliantly capitalizes on the deep agricultural heritage and the specific microclimate of that region. The historic estates there offer a profound sense of permanence.
History and tradition, which acts as a very powerful emotional anchor for a wedding ceremony. And the vineyards, much like we saw in Michigan, offer a built-in luxury aesthetic.
But in Ontario, the execution leans slightly more into that old-world estate-driven elegance rather than the rustic chic vibe. It's less about barnwood and more about manicured gardens and stone cellars.
Okay, so we have the intense cosmopolitan energy of Toronto, and we have the quiet, old-world romance of Niagara-on-the-Lake. But then the research brings up Georgian Bay.
Oh, Georgian Bay. I have to be honest, reading this section completely stopped me in my tracks.
It's a completely different world.
It heavily contrasts Toronto's structured urban energy with Georgian Bay's pure, rugged, almost untamed natural beauty. The document paints this incredible, vivid picture.
Crystal clear, deep blue waters, rugged rocky shores.
Massive cottage-style luxury venues built directly into the cliffs. And the ultimate peak of wedding exclusivity renting, entirely private island resorts.
Georgian Bay is geographically and geologically one of the most fascinating features on the continent. It is technically a massive bay of Lake Huron, but it is so large, so deep, and so ecologically distinct that it's often referred to by locals and geologists as the sixth Great Lake.
That's amazing.
But what really defines its aesthetic is the rock.
Wait, the rock? What do you mean?
The shores of Georgian Bay are part of the Canadian Shield.
Okay, wait, the Canadian Shield. For those of us who aggressively skipped Geology 101 in college, what is that, and why does it make the coastline look so different from the beaches in Michigan?
The Canadian Shield is a massive geological shield of exposed Precambrian rock. We're talking about some of the oldest rock on the face of the Earth.
Whoa.
During the last ice age, massive glaciers scraped across this region, completely stripping away the topsoil. It left behind this incredibly hard, undulating, exposed granite and nice bedrock.
So instead of the soft, pulverized quartz sand dunes you find in Michigan,
Georgian Bay gives you these sweeping, smooth, ancient stone coastlines dropping off into incredibly deep, clear water. It creates a completely different visual texture.
it is a harsher, more dramatic, more ancient landscape.
And paradoxically, placing a hyper-modern, ultra-luxurious venue nestled within that harsh, ancient rock makes the luxury feel even more exclusive.
Because it's so hard to build there.
Exactly. It feels more earned and more comforting. It is the absolute definition of a high-end remote retreat.
A private island resort surrounded by ancient bedrock and crystal clear water. It genuinely sounds like something out of a James Bond movie.
It really does.
But here is where my highly practical, stress-prone brain kicks in. And I'm going to push back hard on this because it raises a massive logistical question for you.
Bring it on.
Niagara-on-the-Lake, Georgian Bay, they sound incredibly romantic. But does adding the international destination label to the wedding invitations inherently make it a logistical nightmare for, say, a U.S.-based couple to plan?
Oh, historically, absolutely.
Right. You aren't just dealing with caterers, you're dealing with border customs for your dress, currency exchange rates fluctuating daily, international vendors, passport requirements for all your guests.
That's a lot of red tape.
And let's go back to that Canadian Shield for a second. It's rugged, yes, but isn't that area also incredibly prone to massive, unpredictable wind squalls off the lake?
The weather can be very volatile, yes.
Are we really pretending that setting up a luxury marquee tent on an exposed granite island in October is a safe bet? How on earth do you manage the logistics of a sudden weather evacuation when you're on a private island in another country?
Those are incredibly valid, highly specific logistical fears. And like I said, historically speaking, you are absolutely right to be terrified.
Okay, so I'm not crazy.
Not at all. 10 or 15 years ago, attempting to plan a complex event across a border, even a friendly, highly integrated border like the US and Canada, introduced a massive layer of friction.
It deterred all but the most wealthy and determined couples, right?
Exactly. You had to worry about whether your favorite US-based florist's contract was legally binding in an Ontario court. You had to figure out how to handle massive international wire transfers to vendors without getting crushed by banking fees.
And to my point about the weather in Georgian Bay,
Yes, the weather can turn violent quickly. Historically, managing an evacuation plan for 150 guests from a private island required hiring a highly specialized, very expensive local logistics coordinator.
it feels like you'd need a master's degree in international supply chain management and maritime law just to order the centerpieces and ensure your guests don't get stranded in a storm.
And that exact terrifying logistical friction is precisely why the modern wedding industry had to undergo a massive technological evolution.
Because people still wanted these weddings, but the old tools weren't working.
Right. The sheer consumer desire for these complex, international, highly curated visions radically outpaced the traditional analog methods of planning them. You couldn't just use a three-ring binder and a telephone anymore.
Which transitions us perfectly into looking at the specific 2026 trends driving these complex visions, and then the ultimate technological tool that couples are using to actually execute them without losing their minds or their life savings.
Let's get into it.
Okay, let's look at the data on how couples are deciding. The source document gives us a very direct head-to-head showdown to help a couple decide between the two regions for a 2026 wedding.
It's a great breakdown.
Let me lay out the breakdown exactly as the market research presents it. You choose the Michigan side if you were primarily looking for budget-friendly venue options, soft sandy beaches, and towering dunes,
Rustic and nature-inspired architectural themes.
and generally laid-back, intimate, barefoot ceremonies. On the flip side, you cross the border and choose Ontario if your vision requires